I have a few mixed feelings about All Bottled Up. I did really like the episode upon my first viewing, and even watching it again for this review, I still like it. The story setup had a lot of potential, and I think the writers took advantage of most of that potential. But I don't know if I'd call it great. But then again, I certainly wouldn't call it average either. Still, having a story and characters that exceed your expectations is often what I look for most when watching MLP, and All Bottled Up does fit that description. First up, I very much enjoy that the dynamic between Starlight and Trixie is further explored and coming up with some very entertaining interactions. These two work off each other so well, and it does make for a very natural progression for Starlight's character arc from her graduation in the previous episode. Although, speaking of which, I really wouldn't call these first couple of entries of Season 7 as a two-parter. The fact that Starlight is now mentoring Trixie is really the only connection between these two stories, and it's a pretty weak one at that. Even if I had somehow skipped Celestial Advice, I could still watch All Bottled Up without feeling that I had missed anything. Though, just like the previous episode, I have to give praise to Spike's portrayal with his usual snarky behavior combined with a genuine supportiveness. I'd love to see if they can go an entire season with Spike at his best. The main six, on the other hand, don't have quite a lot to do with this story. In some ways, it feels as though the writers have mashed two different plots into one episode. Maybe they didn't think they could stretch a conflict between Starlight and Trixie into a full 20-minute story? Now, with that said, I don't really mind switching over to the main six every now and then. Their dialogue is fun, including an escape the room premise was an interesting addition. I think this song would have probably fit better with an Equestria Girls film rather than an episode of MLP, but both the
"And if I know them, they're gonna sing a song"
setup and the
"You missed the Griffin record by 2 seconds. Probably shouldn't have sung that song"
conclusion was very funny, and shows that the MLP writers know how to poke fun at themselves. But let's get back to the main characters here, Starlight and Trixie. On the one hand, Starlight is once again running headlong into trouble by trying to use magic to solve her problems rather than talking about it. And Trixie's ego as well as her cluelessness seem to be amped up at least a bit more than usual for the purposes of the story. On the other hand, I think the literal bottling up of your negative emotions on Starlight's part was a nice bit of visual storytelling. It's an effective way to get the kids to understand the message, and it's certainly still relevant for adults to step back and think about their own actions. I probably would have appreciated it more if they spent a bit more effort on showing and just a bit less on telling, but what we got was still worthwhile. As for Trixie's overconfident cluelessness as well as her insensitive interactions towards Starlight, even though it is amped up a little more than what we've seen with her character in the past, I still think it fits the circumstances, and a lot of that has to do with the Dunning-Kruger effect. For those of you who may not know what that is, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which low-ability individuals suffer from illusory superiority, mistakenly assessing their ability as much higher than it really is. Basically, when you first try out a new skill and it comes much easier than expected, you start believing that everything about this new skill must be just as easy. But as this chart shows, the more you learn about a skill, the more you realize just how little you actually know. And this is exactly what happens with Trixie here. The moment she turns a salt shaker into a teacup, she is overwhelmed with a new sense of self-confidence on top of her already over-bloated sense of self-confidence established in previous episodes. So, in essence, I have to applaud this episode for not one, but two relevant lessons for the audience to learn. How ignoring your negative emotions can have lasting consequences, and how one's overconfidence in learning a new skill can leave a less than desirable impression on their mentor. All in all Bottled Up makes for an enjoyable entry in Season 7. Even with a few issues that keep me from loving it beginning to end, I'm happy with any episode that exceeds my expectations while giving me a few good laughs along the way. But now I would like to hear from each of you. Given the focus on Trixie in particular these last few episodes, do you suppose the MLP staff are intentionally shifting stories more towards the secondary characters with an eventual plan in mind? I mean, Trixie is just one example, but even Starlight has been getting more and more in the spotlight as time goes on. Makes me wonder what else they have in store for future episodes. What do you think? I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.